Well, welcome to Loose Ends, friends, where we seek to tie up the loose ends from our Sunday sermons and also get practical about living transformed lives. My name is Dan Lee. I'm the ministry and campus pastor of Parramatta MBM, and I'm joined today by our very own Ray Galea and a special guest, Susan Boyley. Welcome, Susan.
Hello.
Susan, you're married to Mark, our membership pastor, and many of us at MBM know and remember very fondly the financial wisdom seminars that you guys have run over a number of years.
Yep.
You've got a background in accounting, and you're very involved with ministry at MBM, particularly amongst some of our women's ministries and kids ministries outreach. Lockdown has probably affected all of us in different ways. Susan, how are you seeking to, remain productive during this time?
Well, I've been enjoying exercise, particularly during this time. I've got the Strava app and have got some challenges that I've been working towards, and that's been really great, catching up with some friends and walking with family as well, about 5Ks a day. Doing some cycling.
A day.
Doing some cycling as well.
Well. How many steps is 5Ks?
I don't know.
Oh, so
you're
Dan might
hitting
know.
the 10,000 regularly?
I don't measure
10,000
steps. Strava just tells me kilometres.
Sounds like 10,000 to me.
So I did 230 Ks in August. So
Oh, wow.
That's good.
that was including bike riding though.
That's all right.
Jeez, that's a fair distance. Okay.
Yeah.
I think everything seems bigger than 5 kilometres at the moment, given that we're so tight and limited in terms of what we can actually cover
Yeah.
in our
Well,
space.
Susan, you were frustrated when we had the hour limit, weren't you? Because
I'm a slow walker.
you take more than an hour. Yeah.
That's right.
Cool. Okay, well, we're going to dive into 1 Timothy. Really, we're coming to the last part of 1 Timothy, and right throughout this book has been a wonderful journey of seeing what God's family looks like, how it ought to function. And there's been a lot of things that have grated against our culture as we seek to live our lives God's way. Particularly the big thing today is going to be money, and I guess in the context of false teaching as well. So, Ray, let's kind of ask the standard question that we typically ask. If you had another 5 minutes in your talk, what sort of things would you like to have picked up on?
Well, you said money, Dan, but it's actually the love of money. A root of all kind of evil says, and everyone knows that. It's obviously not money itself. If I had an extra 5 minutes, well, I had a great quote from Tim Keller that really just spoke about the question that Christians often ask, is tithing, the whole 10% thing, is that an Old Testament Jewish requirement or is that a New Testament one? And he makes the very simple point that if Jews under the Old Covenant who were on the other side of the cross and never saw the fulfillment of the ages were tithing and giving that as their first portion, how much more should Christians who live after the life, death and resurrection of our Lord Jesus and the pouring out of the Spirit? So it's kind of a how much more argument. And you see Jesus rebuking the Pharisees for tithing, their spice rack and letting and justice and mercy go through. But he says, do one without neglecting the other. So I think he's actually expecting that principle's operating right through. But certainly the language of generosity, driven by the gospel, that he who is rich became poor so that we through his poverty might become rich, and that we are called to excel in the grace of giving. That, I learned as a young Christian, I heard generally, Christians need to be generous. So coming from my background, that was like 20 cents in the plate, right? And then I thought, I wonder what the mature Christians do in this church. And then I went around, I was so disappointed because they all said, I start off a base of 10%, anything on top of that's generosity. What? I thought, I was so disappointed. I thought, because I aspired to be mature, and I thought, that's what they're doing. But what you discover, once you get in the groove of it, you actually get to see God at work. And I think people rip themselves off. Nothing like seeking first his kingdom with money and then seeing God coming through in unexpected ways. And boy, does that strengthen your faith.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you definitely pick up something there that crossing the line to part with our money is a really hard thing. But once we actually see that play out, generosity. Susan, maybe you've seen this, I guess you wear another hat of working with a mission organisation. How have you seen generosity play out either in your own circumstances or as you've done work with that mission organisation? Yeah,
so we ourselves were missionaries, and it's a very humbling thing to live off other people's generosity. We saw God provide for us. Our church just said, we're going to kick in 50% of your support. MBM supported us generously through those 4 years that we were in Thailand, and God just provided more than we needed. And even our leftover money we were able to use to bless another couple as they went through Bible college in Thailand. So I think, you might give and not think it's much, but it all adds together and it has a multiplication effect.
Yeah.
It didn't just bless our family, it blessed the people we were ministering to. And then, our surplus then was able to bless another family who was still serving in Thailand. So it has a real multiplication effect.
Yeah. You know who taught me this? It was actually my wife, Sandy. Because when we were going through more college, we saved about 20 grand to carry us through the 4 years. There was no HEX or Oz study then. And, and I think the student minister payment rate that was offered then was about $3,000 a year. So we had like 2 kids. And I'm thinking I don't think we need to give to the church. I'm sacrificing a salary here, And Sandy said, nope, we've got to, whatever we get, we've got to tithe. And so I reluctantly said yes, shamed by my wife. Well, God took care of us through those 4 years and then some. And I think to myself, wow, if I just lean on my own understanding, I would have missed out on God carrying us through. And it strengthened my faith in him and allowed him to be glorified. So, sometimes in your family, usually at some point, one is more generous than the other. Have you noticed that? So in a marriage, I've noticed there's usually one more.
Other.
Yeah. And so, more recently, I've had the kind of the encouragement to keep doing PBs with generosity. But then it was particularly Sandy laying a foundation. And so that's discipleship within marriage and family, isn't it? Yeah.
And I think that's important even with our kids, to encourage them to give even though they don't really have an income at the moment. But, they might have some money that we've set aside for them or some Christmas money or whatever.
Some birthday money.
Yep. And our kids have just decided over the last few years to give a certain amount to MBM each year. And I feel like that's such a great foundation. Yeah. They just give it at the start of the year so they don't have to think about it and it's done. And then, and they don't, I think they feel a part of things because they're actually giving something to the church themselves as well.
It's partnership.
And it's laying a foundation, as you said, for the future.
Yeah. I mean, you guys have picked up on financial generosity towards church. Do you want to kind of broaden that? Like, do you seek to give towards other charities or organisations like family, I guess, particularly thinking through maybe migrants here in Australia, maybe their families doing it tough back in their home country? Do you want to speak into those things?
Oh, I think there's a lot of people even at MBM who they have family overseas and, they're very generous sending money over to help support their families. I think that's actually a really important value for them.
Absolutely.
And the organisation I work with is an Asian sort of based organisation, and they also have that value. They allow people to budget for that money, support for parents, and I think that's a really important, cultural and I think it's a biblical value too to be concerned for your family.
So I think a couple of weeks ago I said you think in terms of 5 categories. I think in terms of 5 categories that however I get an income, whether it's from a pension, a wage, or a superannuation payout, a retirement payout, I've got to bless myself, bless my family, bless the poor, bless the church that feeds me, and bless our missionaries. So I think they're I don't think there's anything missed in that. I think pretty much that covers all the categories.
I think so. Yeah.
And you want to just double check that actually all of those are operating. Some people want to just selectively give in one area and be the hero, but actually God actually wants you to make sure you're taking care of your family, but also not so that you're not taking care of the elders in the church and the staffing that ministers to you, or we forget about overseas work, or we do overseas work but not local church work. And I once had a staff member, I love telling this story, he's a godly person, and I discovered that he gave all right, but he actually gave to everything but the local church. And I said, well, why are you doing that? And he said, because I feel like I'm on the receiving end of it. But I said, you're not the only one receiving. You're actually feeding the ministry that's feeding your children, feeding your faith and other people's faith. And so he realised it was like a beautiful quality, wasn't it? Like it was a lovely thing. But I thought he was unbalanced in his giving patterns. And then he corrected it because he was really a very godly person. Yeah.
That's helpful to think through those categories. Susan, I'm keen to drill in a bit more to that. Like, what does that look like? Does that look like for you and Mark at the beginning of the year, making sure you've got all those bases covered as you set a budget? Do you guys set a budget? Would you recommend other people set a budget just to, I guess, be on the front foot when it comes to generosity and not being reactive?
Look, I think budgeting. It sounds like a bit of a boring thing, but I think it's actually really key to at least budget your giving, if nothing else. If you've got enough money that you don't actually need to budget, and some people are in that category, they know roughly that they'll have enough. I think you really need to, keep yourself accountable in terms of your giving. So I have a little spreadsheet that I just track all our income to make sure that we're actually giving enough, because it's easy for extra amounts to come in, like your tax refund, or sometimes, you might get a gift of money from a family member or something like that. Sometimes.
So just on that, Susan, you're saying you're not just talking about wages now. You're talking about any source of income that comes to you. You're giving a first portion back to God.
Yeah,
God's priorities.
we have we kind of just keep a track of it so that so that we make sure that we feel like, because I think we always feel like we're being generous.
Yeah.
And sometimes the reality might be we could be a lot more generous if we don't really know what our income is, or if we don't count all those extra little bits and pieces that sometimes, things might come your way that you didn't plan for originally.
I know. I always feel like I give out of my comfort, so because you always think whatever I'm giving, I could give more.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
And, I think of that widow who gave, those 2 pennies, and
All she had to live off.
All she had to live off. Or the Macedonians in 2 Corinthians who begged Paul for the privilege out of their poverty to support the poor Jerusalem Christians who were going through a famine. They begged out of their poverty.
Yeah, wow.
To give. We beg to receive, but they actually beg to give. And I don't know what it is about the Macedonian church, which includes Philippi. Wow, that warms your heart. And they were the first. The Church of Philippi was the first to support Paul, and they continued supporting him in his gospel work. And they were young Christians. They really were an extraordinary example. And you can bet your life not one of them is regretting it now.
Yeah, absolutely. Think of all the gospel fruit that kind of got born out of that.
Yeah.
That generosity. Yeah. Hey guys, I'm keen to change tack and particularly hone in on verse 17 and hear your thoughts about particularly this topic of greed and the culture that we live in. Verse 17 says, "Command those who are rich in this present world not to be arrogant or to put their hope in wealth, which is so uncertain, but to put their hope in God." I guess particularly want to pick up on that first part there, talking about those who are rich in this present world. I feel like that's us. We might not feel like we're rich, but I think the reality is we are. Do you guys want to expand on that, and I guess particularly diagnose why we've become probably, on the one hand, really greedy and comfortable with the materialistic culture that we live in?
I think wealth can be quite deceptive. I think it does give people a false sense of security, and we live in a wealthy country, and so we're blinded to it. We can't see how wealthy we are. I think if you have had the opportunity to travel overseas, or if you've migrated from overseas, you're very aware of the wealth that Australia has. But I think we can easily fall into that trap of feeling like, we're comfortable and we can put our security in being comfortable rather than putting our hope in God. And I think wealth is probably very deceiving in that way.
Oh, boy. I mentioned in the talk, it is the hardest sin to diagnose because it's not binary. It's not black and white. It's not, it's not like I commit adultery, I don't commit adultery, like it's, sexuality, temptation can be a spectrum thing.
You can hide your greed.
It's very
You
hard.
could flaunt it, but you can also hide it.
Yeah, and you're rubbing shoulders with others. And so we're always comparing ourselves with each other. And so anyone thinks, I'm not rich because I'm not, Jamie Packer. And I've seen his boat on the Sydney Harbour. That is one serious boat he's got. So, I'm not him.
Yeah. But
like I think I mentioned in the talk, there are millions who have more than me. There are billions who have less than me. We're in the top 5% in Australia. You can be in a public housing estate in the western suburbs of Sydney on a pension, and you're you're still in the top 15%. So the rest of us have got a job and earn an income. We're the rich young ruler. That's how I always think. That's how I need to see myself as rich. And what I hear, Paul is instructing the rich in the presence of the poor like slaves, and they're seeing God's word being addressed to the rich. And I think that would have been an interesting dynamic in the church in Ephesus where Paul's instructions to Timothy is being read out loud. But what did you call it? a cancer. How did you describe it? Did you say something before we were talking?
Oh, I just think I think we don't believe the warnings against greed. I think we're quite comfortable with greed rather than, pushing against it and really working at being generous. I think that's our blind spot probably.
Yeah, or to think that I'm not greedy. The other guys who have got well more than me are the ones who are greedy, or look at the people that are in the media, in the reports of corporate greed or other things like that, but actually diagnosing our own heart.
I've only ever once, it was actually Jeff Kushkiri who used to be on staff and was a missionary, and we told each other exactly everything we have, how we spend, how we go. I have only ever done that with one person. I felt so naked. I could have confessed to him any kind of sins and I would have been okay. But I felt just sharing my financial situations in life and having him comment on it and me comment on his, that was a very good experience. I think we need to do that more. Find someone who you trust, who actually is God-centered and committed to it. And all of a sudden, and you know what he said? I learned from him, I hadn't been giving a portion of our family allowance that we were getting at the time. I think, why is it? That's an income I receive. And I didn't give my first fruits from that. And just that conversation allowed me to be that much more generous, and so glad I did. Imagine getting to heaven and discovering you gave nothing or very little. Wow. I want to avoid people living a life of regret when they get to their end, eh?
Well, if we don't talk about it, we don't have that benefit, do we, of each other's insights and wisdom. And my role as a finance manager for this mission organisation puts me in a unique spot to actually see people's giving. And I'm blown away by the generosity that I see.
So
and then I see a lot of...
These are missionaries.
Missionaries.
And their generosity.
Oh, sorry, the people supporting the missionaries.
Oh, that lovely, yeah.
And there's a lot of, just regular $50 a week, $100 a month, that kind of thing. But there's also people that give big chunks of money and... that's quite.
And that'd be all on top of
that. Sort of rebukes
giving.
Me in my own thinking, my own giving.
That's an encouragement, isn't it?
I mean, I don't necessarily know who these people are.
Yeah.
And it's better if I don't know who they are in a sense. But I think maybe that does touch on that thing that talking about money is such a no-go.
Yeah.
And maybe we do need to be more transparent.
Yep.
We feel, like you said, you said you felt so naked. You feel very vulnerable.
Wow. And
it's interesting.
But I felt so good afterwards. It was like, well, this is who I am. Where do I need to be challenged? And and I got to speak in Jeff's life, and he got to speak into mine. And if you trust someone, well, that's another expression of trust. It's a bit like I trust Jesus for my salvation, but there's a whole lot of areas I need to trust him in. We kind of think I trust Jesus to get me into heaven, right? He paid the price, but Jesus wants to be Lord of all of our life and wants us to entrust him with all of our life. And what do they say? The last thing to get converted is the wallet. And Luther was right again.
Yeah, and I think you're right there. It's inviting the comment of someone else, isn't it? To speak in there and just to kind of, I guess, push a little or ask the questions. As you said, the family allowance example that you spoke about, Ray. Yeah. I think we end up being a healthier church and being more fully devoted disciples of Jesus as a result of that.
And it's so good for the faith. It sharpens your faith. Yeah.
Great. Hey, Susan, can I guess particularly the season that we're in at the moment with COVID, there is, a lot of uncertainty around finances. And so that tension between seeking to be generous but also saving, I mean, that's not just limited to COVID, but like that could be saving, for your family, for the future, all that sort of stuff. Can you give us some tips or how you seek to manage that?
I think for me, I guess I always want to maximise what I've got. So I want to work hard at being generous and sort of have that accountability of the spreadsheet, actually looking at the real numbers to make myself accountable. But I think also, there's ways that we can save money as well. I think, it's easy to waste money and fritter it away. And so, I think obviously we need to be conscious of our budget. We need to make sure we've got enough money to pay our expenses. That's really important. And we also, we need to push ourselves to be generous. That doesn't, for some people, maybe 10% is way too much. They don't have that much. But for other people, 10% is going to be way too little. So, I think we just need to be very aware of what we've got and what we need and not what we want, perhaps, and just be careful not to waste money. All the little things add up, right?
You know, it's interesting. Haven't you noticed if you save money during this COVID?
Well, you should have.
Yeah. What I'm saying is, wow.
You've saved a lot of expenses.
Which made me then realise, where was that money going?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I understand, say, the
transport.
toll or whatever.
Yeah.
You know, and I've tried to sidestep the tolls as much as I can.
Less traffic on the roads.
Yeah, but
Meals out, I suppose,
Yeah,
is the big thing.
it's made me realise, you know.
Clothes, you can't really go shopping for clothes at the moment.
Yes. And my wife hasn't had her
Although
hair
you can-
done.
you can
My
do
wife
online.
hasn't done her hair for quite a while. And I've saved some serious money there. But no, seriously, I just think it has really brought to my attention we could be better stewards in how we spend our income, and that could be just more opportunities to invest in the kingdom. Yeah.
So some of that is picking up on the lifestyle, hey?
It is
the
like,
lifestyle
yeah.
we choose to live. I remember going through college and, you know, it just made us realise, actually, we can, you know,
Live on a lot less.
live on a lot less because we'd grown so used to a certain lifestyle based on, you know, either, you know, the lies of the world, the
people you hang out with.
the people you hang out with, but actually, you know, to make a conscious choice that actually it might just mean stepping back from.
You know,
that holiday.
I think Rick Warren's a good example here. You know, when his book just became so famous, Purpose Driven Life, like it was serious money. And we're talking like millions and millions and millions, right? And he did a couple of things. Number one, he decided to keep the same car, live in the same house. Then he decided to pay back the church for the 30 years they'd paid his salary.
Oh, wow.
Then he worked on reverse tithing and gave 90% and kept 10%.
Wow.
Now, no wonder God entrusted him with that success. But I thought, the impressive bit was actually staying in the same house and the same car. And that's about, if I have food and clothing, says Paul, I will be content with this.
Yeah.
And
I guess it's not being arrogant like our verse says, isn't it?
Yeah.
Don't be arrogant if you get rich.
And the quote that we've been, the thing from Luther, if I failure to be content means it stops me from enjoying what I do have. If I'm not content, then I'm.
You can't even enjoy what you do have.
He said it has this funny effect. Sorry, I've forgotten the full quote, but it's there in the sermon. But it basically gets in the way of even enjoying what I do have, because you're always looking for what you don't have. You're always living with you know, I don't have that toy, I don't have that lifestyle. And rather than looking around and saying, you know, thank you, Lord, I've got this, I've got a bed, and all of a sudden I start to count my blessings, which means the quality of my joyful experience actually is enhanced. Yeah. Christian life is the better life.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I don't think we really believe it's better to give than receive.
Yes.
Do we?
And literally it is. It's more blessed to give than to keep.
Yes.
You know, more blessed to give than to, receive. Yeah, it's actually more blessed to give than to keep to hold on to.
I feel like with excess money,
hard.
we often think, oh, what can I get with this money,
know.
you know?
Absolutely.
But
Yep.
maybe we should be thinking, who can I bless? You
Who can
know,
I
what
bless?
can I give
think it was
rather than what can I get?
Simon Manchester somewhere said that all the basic things of life have a pleasure element of about 10 minutes. And then they laugh. It's true. It's, you know, you think of all those things.
10 minutes is that
10
all?
minutes. That's a bit
The
sad.
short-term reward is really very minimal.
Very short.
But, you know, the joy of obedience, that lasts long and deep. Yeah.
Well, guys, it's been super helpful. I should have said at the start, Susan, you know, the standard disclaimer that all the advice is not what's the line that they say? I can't
Not
remember.
professional advice.
Not a
I don't think
professional
I've given any professional advice. That's okay.
But nonetheless, it's been super helpful just to kind of hear how you guys seek to be generous and be thankful for all the good things that God has given us. And this sadly brings us to the end of this episode of Loose Ends podcast, but it's not the end of the conversation. If you do want to pick up anything that we've said or anything from 1 Timothy, please do get in touch with us. Send us through your questions. questions@mbm.org.au is the email address. And this is actually our final episode on 1 Timothy. So we got rid of Rob. I came in as a special host, and well, hopefully Rob might make another appearance again. But,
Well, the podcast was an experiment for 1 Timothy, so we'll review it then, I guess, Dan, to see whether we'll keep it as an ongoing tradition or not.
Sure.
Love your feedback.
Love
then.
your feedback. Yep,
Yeah.
send it through to questions@nbm.org.au as well. But until next time, stay deep in the Word and keep trusting our great God to keep transforming us for His glory. Bye, friends.
Amen.